Thank you for tuning in. In this video, I want to talk about why I believe it could be tricky and risky to get stuck on just one model or theory, especially when it comes down to explaining behavior or well-being of complex social mammals that we are still learning so much about. So a couple of examples could be the very popular pyramid of Maslow that puts welfare needs in this pyramid shape and says there is a hierarchy of needs. Another example could be the 5 freedoms of welfare needs, and but also an example could be the emotional systems of Jaak Panksepp. And when you have theories or models or systems, I think it's very important to go to the source. And first of all, I look at the dates. Like Pyramid of Maslow, that is 1940s. So that's a long, long time ago. And Jaak Panksepp, his emotional systems, that stems from the 90s. And, 5 freedoms is also a couple of decades ago. So I think it's important to note that, and then to be critical and to research further, because you can ask yourself, have those theories been criticized by other scientists or researchers or experts? And what are they saying? And you can even read about the researcher themselves. Like if you've read Jaak Panksepp's book from 1998, I believe, out of the top of my head, could be 1996, but I think it was 1998, Effective Neuroscience, his book, great book. But then you want to search for interviews or talks with Jaak Panksepp that have been done later, after his book, because maybe he'll say different things, maybe he'll add on to those things. And that can be really interesting. But also listening and reading and learning from others, other fields, but also other scientists in the same field, and see what they have to say, because that could be so interesting and you could learn a lot more. And then you can find out that if you were just stuck to that one model, then you may be missing out on new information. So important, I believe. An example, putting welfare needs in a hierarchy, that could be tricky because they aren't always in the same hierarchy. An individual may have other priorities in regards to well-being than another individual. And an example could be that you think that you need to provide shelter and food and water and nutrients because that's at the bottom of the pyramid and that's the most important. But, there are dogs who will stop eating because they have a lack of social connection or are grieving. And then for those dogs, if you look at the priority, it shifts. So there's another priority. And the same applies to humans. And people have found out about this. In example, in prisons, when people are kept imprisoned, a lot of emphasis was placed on that pyramid of Maslow and just being like, okay, they need shelter and they need protection from the elements and they need food, and then they will keep on surviving. But a lot of psychological problems arise if you only provide humans with that. And they have found out and discovered that humans need a lot more to survive and to not become sick or ill or, mentally and physically. And the same applies to other mammals. So those needs maybe should not be placed in a hierarchy. Maybe we should let go of a pyramid model and look further, look broader. And the 5 freedoms is an example, was groundbreaking at the time, but we discovered later on that, freedom of thirst, freedom of hunger, freedom of stress does not guarantee well-being, feeling really good. So in order to have good well-being, the animal also needs positive experiences and outlets for natural behavior, but also being able to perform them with pleasure. And that can become individual and personal. And so it's a lot broader than just those fixed models. And we're also seeing that welfare models, they've developed. They've developed onto 5 domains of welfare, and even they are being criticized. So there was a paper in 2024 where people are questioning whether it's enough, whether these models that we're creating are really truly enough to guarantee, to safeguard well-being for other animals. So it's important to keep up to date and to read what's going on and how things are developing. And the same goes for those emotional systems from Jaak Panksepp. Are they truly systems? Are they fixed systems? Is it true that they are in specific areas of the brain? Is it true that we have a reptilian brain and a more modern brain, and that the reptilian brain is lower? And humans are discovering, other scientists are discovering, that it's a lot more complex than that. And the thing is that if you hear Jaak Panksepp talk, he's really nuanced, and he's really, he's careful with his words, and he doesn't just make assumptions. Well, he makes a couple of assumptions, but he's scientific about it, and he's nuanced about it. But what happens is other people take his systems and put it in this chart, and then start to say things like, oh, that is seeking, that is fear, not realizing that you can have a whole mixture of feelings, and maybe not realizing that the brain is far more complex, and it's hard to divide the brain into fixed systems, and people are discovering that it's far more complex than that. And that's why it's interesting to also read the work of other neuroscientists. Even Joseph Ledoux, who is really critical on Panksepp, but even he has these really interesting insights to share. And also scientists like Anil Seth, who is talking about consciousness and trying to figure out how that evolves and how that works. Not only look at scientists, but also different fields. Even philosophy can help you broaden your mind. And by doing so, by remaining open and learning from all kinds of different areas, different fields, you will find out that once you start talking about things, you will become more nuanced, and you will become less emotional when somebody disagrees with you. You'll be able to ask questions, And the same goes for scientific papers. A lot of dog professionals are waving scientific papers around and citing papers. And that's okay, that's cool. That means that you're doing your research, which is great. But please don't use scientific papers as proof. Science isn't there to prove anything. Science is there to question everything. And those experiments that they've done, they just come up with data and results, and those results are interesting and fascinating. And yes, you can use those results in your arguments, but especially when it comes down to science about behavior, there are so many factors at play that it's really hard to get all the variables lined up and to make sure that it's only that one hormone that is influencing your experiment. You can ask a lot of questions about papers and about science. And that's what science is truly about, asking questions. So it's not really about proving a theory, it's about questioning a theory. And science keeps evolving. Theories keep evolving. They should keep evolving. And the same applies for models and systems that people use. They should be like clay. You should be able to mold them and be able to change them, and you should be able to change your views. And I'm very sure that the scientists that I've named here are very aware of this, but it's more that we as dog lovers, we are desperately seeking for that one answer, the truth, And I think we should be careful with that. So if you're clinging on to one theory, if you're holding on to one model, please open up and look around, read around, search more, stay curious, and you'll find out that those models can evolve and you can evolve. And that way, the conversations will become more nuanced and open. And just remain curious. I think that's the most important part. And never stop learning.